Hi, Professor Cudio. Question number 1. Out of the 5 cell organelles, the first one that I'm going to speak about is the centrioles. The centrioles are known as the cell spindle because they play an important role in mitosis. What happens essentially is the centrioles replicate themselves and they migrate towards each end of the cell. They also help to arrange the chromosomes so that each daughter cell receives the appropriate amount of chromosomes. And what happens is during prophase, once the centrioles migrate to each end of the cell, that is when the mitotic spindle begins. And once prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase is complete, cytokinesis happens, and during cytokinesis is when we receive 2 identical daughter cells. So that sort of summarizes the centrioles, also known as the cell spindle. Number 2, we're going to talk about the mitochondria, which is the ATP, known as ATP, and that is because it is the powerhouse of our energy. What happens with the mitochondria is when we eat throughout the day, we eat our food, different meals throughout the day, the mitochondria takes the energy from our food and transforms it into energy that is needed for our cells. It is a very, very important cell because without energy, we wouldn't be able to move, get alone live. So it definitely is a powerhouse. I know you're not a fan of that word, but it is a powerhouse throughout our cells. It helps keep them alive by utilizing the energy that we digest and thus transforming it, and it's known as ATP. So number 3, we have lysosomes. Lysosomes is known as the garbage disposal of our cells because it basically serves to degrade all the waste from the outside as well as inside of our cell itself. Anything that is not needed, it will consume. Also, in instances where cells are no longer needed or it played a short purpose, lysosomes come into place and it basically destroys the cell, and that is known as cell suicide. So that is the lysosomes. So number 4, we have the rough endoplasmic reticulum, and essentially you have 2 endoplasmic reticulums. One is rough and one is smooth, and it's sort of in the name itself. It goes off the appearance. The rough have what's called ribosomes on the outer layer, and basically the ribosomes attach themselves to the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Once those proteins attach themselves to the rough ER, then the rough ER will then modify them within its body, within its little lines. It'll modify the proteins where it sees fit. And once it's 100% ready, then it gets ready to send them off to its next destination, which will be the Golgi body. And lastly, we have the Golgi body. The Golgi body then receives the proteins from the rough endoplasmic reticulum. It also does some minor modifications to the proteins, and it essentially then transports it to to the final destination. It could also send them to the lysosomes if they're no longer needed. But once they're received and further modified in the Golgi body, I like to call it FedEx because it basically just transports it on out of the cell. And that concludes video number 1 on the 5 cell organelles. I spoke on the centrioles, mitochondria, lysosomes, rough endoplasmic reticulum, and the Golgi body.